Okay, we are recording. I'm also going to issue a purring warning because there is a purring cat lurking around. Hey, Baz! Anyway, hello!
Hello, and welcome to the third part of the trauma first aid kit. I always have to try and remember that.
I was sitting there, it went just before we were recording, going, trauma podcast first aid. It's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? We don't know the name of it. But it's okay, we got there. So, yeah.
So again, as in the other two episodes, it's me, Oliver.
And me, Jax. And I think you already heard the meow of Basil, who is here giving a lot of wisdom. Yes.
Yes. So what we're going to talk about today is basically an optional add-on section, which is taken from a day retreat I went on a few years ago on forgiveness and self-forgiveness. A day retreat is called a sesshin, but it really is just a day retreat. And this one was a silent retreat, so only the person taking the retreat was allowed to speak. And it was incredible how we were able to communicate very well without talking to each other, can you pass the milk and stuff like that. We were able to do just by expressions. But anyway, we're not talking about milk, although Basil would like some.
Oh, that's why he's purring.
And the person who led it was a very good teacher called Vajragupta. And so I have her to thank for this sesshin I went on. And it was very helpful for me. And I thought we could just go over what was said in the sesshin with the day retreat with Vajragupta, and I think people might find it quite helpful for trauma. And like I say, it's for forgiveness and self-forgiveness. So,
and I think that's, obviously knowing sort of for both of our parts, I think we both have things we've experienced which we find it difficult to forgive ourselves about. Yes. And I remember when we were talking about things that had happened, and you were sort of saying to me about how it's impossible to kind of create yourself an airtight alibi, especially when you've experienced trauma and your brain is it almost wants to blame yourself, doesn't it? Like you try and go, but this and this and this, and your brain finds this wiggle room. It goes, and it's like you're sort of almost determined to hurt yourself sometimes. I feel, but not in any suggesting blame, but just that somehow it kind of the pain expresses. So I think something about forgiveness sounds.
And what
very
you end
useful.
up with is either hating yourself or hating someone else. So it's either sort of anger towards yourself or anger towards other people, and like we've said, those anger and shame and guilt are very toxic, and so they can lead to things like addiction and antisocial behaviour, and you can very quickly fall down a rabbit hole if you're not careful that you don't want to go down. So this is a way of looking at forgiveness and self-forgiveness. So undoing that toxic anger and shame that you might get if you experience trauma. And it's a very simple little story, really. That's all it is.
So tell me.
So what is this? Well, the first thing to say is before I tell you the story, on the day retreat, on the sesshin, we got into quite we did some meditation first, so we were very receptive to the story. Now, a lot of people listening to this might not know much about meditation, or they might know a lot about meditation, but what I'm going to say is just get yourself into a relaxed state. Basically, turn off your phone. It's going to take about 15-20 minutes. And maybe have a cup of herbal tea, not coffee, and get into a relaxed and receptive state where you can stay for about 15 minutes or so. As with meditation, the state you want to be in is not the same as being sleepy. You need to be alert but relaxed if you can be. And what they always say in Buddhism is when you meditate, you should be in a state where your turban is on fire or you have a snake in your lap. So meditation isn't falling asleep, it's being very alert With mindfulness meditation, it's almost like you can see more clearly, that you can see everything much more clearly when you're meditating. So just get yourself into a relaxed state, and turn off your phone and have a cup of tea, and just try and sit quietly just for a few minutes, and then you can listen to the music we're playing if you want, or just gaze out of the window if you've got a garden or something like that, and just get into a nice receptive state. But don't fall asleep. Don't fall asleep whatever you do, because you have to do it again if you do.
I mean, we won't judge you, but you will have to listen again.
Yeah, you'll have to listen to it again if you fall asleep. So okay, so if you're feeling nice and relaxed, the story really is about a gamekeeper who illegally set a trap and did not return to check it for several days. And a fox caught its hind paw in the trap and was slowly dying. Okay. But the gamekeeper was extremely ill and had to set the trap to catch some food, because he couldn't go out and buy any. He didn't check the trap because he was extremely ill. Normally he would have checked the trap every day. The fox had some pups which were waiting in the den for the trapped and dying fox to return to bring them food. Without the adult fox that was dying in the trap, they would almost certainly die of starvation. The fox that was in the trap earlier that morning had killed some baby rabbits. Right, okay, so that's the story, and you can wake up now and to feel so relaxed. As you can see, as the story continues, the picture of blame gets more and more complex.
Yeah, because at first I sort of felt for the fox, and I thought, that stupid gamekeeper, and then it turns out he's ill, and I was like, and he needs that food, and
Yes.
and then obviously, also then it turns out that fox has killed some little baby bunnies, and
the pups were dying because of what the gamekeeper had done.
Yeah, but Mummy Fox killed some bunnies. That she's a killer.
Yeah.
That fox.
Yeah.
So yes, I was on everyone's sides at different points in that story, I think.
Yeah. So the picture of blame gets more and more complex, and I would say more muddled in a way, as we learn more and more about the story. So what, on the surface, seems a very simple situation, wasn't at all simple at all. And Basil has things to say about it as well.
Yeah, he says, "Give me milk."
Give me milk. And this is the same with nearly all situations where there is blame and also self-blame.
Sorry, we're just having a tea interlude.
We have some milk here.
Basil has said, he said, I waited for 2 minutes and now I require milk.
Yes.
Sorry, okay, I'm just going to pour my tea.
It's all right. We can have a little tea break.
Tea break, exactly.
But it's the same with nearly all situations where there is blame and also self-blame. We tend to write ourselves tabloid headlines, and this is what we always do. And the real scenario is more like an essay. And I think we write these headlines because partly that's how we're wired up to do. That's what we're wired up to do in life, and it's very, very self-destructive. And I think it might also be laziness.
Yeah.
Because we are naturally a lazy kind of creature.
And I think also I think we're designed to want answers, clear answers, or I don't know, designed or programmed, or so you want you don't want some kind of messy sort of, well, it could be this, or it could be this, and in a way it's a mix of this person's fault and this person's fault, but then it's not really that person's fault because they have their own problems, their own issues, their own reasons why they're that way. And sometimes I think also, I don't know, certainly for me, I want that kind of merry-go-round of complexity to just stop.
Yeah.
And I just want, wanting someone to blame sounds stupid, but just in the entirety of life, I just want a simple answer.
Yeah.
This is okay, now Basil's attacking a bag.
Carry on.
Okay, Basil
has a lot to say about this this story.
He's like, the other episodes he was very well behaved, and this time he is not. No. But yes, so I just sometimes I think we need simplicity because it's I find it a bit frightening not knowing the answer sometimes as well.
But the trouble is, with that simplicity comes toxic emotions. Or in Buddhism, they call it mental states. They don't really call them emotions. So, it's far better, really, to look at the whole story, which is really what we've been doing with the cognitive therapy, with the columns. Looking at the story, the full story, and getting rid of that toxicity of anger and self-blame and guilt.
And getting rid of the extremes, the it's all this or it's all that.
Yeah.
Kind of... Yeah.
And is it laziness? Who really is to blame? And I always remember right at the end of the day retreat, the session, which is what this story is based on. But Vajragupta just said to us all, "Shit happens," and really, that maybe life is like that. I mean, I think in Buddhism they would call it the worldly winds, and they might also go into karma, which I don't think we're going to go into with this, but because it's a very complex issue, and it involves believing in being rebirth and all that kind of stuff and Buddhist ethics. But maybe bad things just happen. And maybe the real story is very complex, but we don't like to see it that way. We like to write these tabloid headlines, but the trouble is, like you said, we want simple answers, but the trouble is, by doing that, we unleash a whole load of toxic emotion, which, like I said, can lead to addiction and antisocial behaviour.
I remember I get stressed about things all the time, and my brother Tom, he's very wise. My brother, my brother Tom, and I kind of go on and on about things like, it's not fair, and he just says to me, life's not fair, and I want to punch him. But he kind of was sort of arguing that, so for me, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in any kind of control or direction and things, but in a way there's a part of me that seems to not believe that. Basil's back of the bag, because there's a part of me that thinks that things should be a certain way, and that there should be kind of reason and fairness. And Tom said to me, that belief is making you unhappy. If you can accept that shit happens, that things are random, that you can't control everything, that Basil will attack bags. You are a monster. Oh, he's like, look at me, how cute I am. That actually, if I could let go of that belief, now he's falling off the table. If I could let go of that belief that things should be fair, I'd be happier, because I'd just kind of go, like almost letting go of the anger that things aren't, the way I feel they should be. And Tom sort of said, well, you're not accepting reality. No. You're fighting against reality, and it's making you unhappy. So that's maybe a tangent, but
I think if you want a Buddhist view of what you just said, it's called dukkha, which is the Buddha said that compared life as being like having an ill-fitting chariot wheel, In ancient India, they all went around on chariots, the wealthy people. It's like having an ill-fitting chariot wheel that's a constant jarring all the time.
Yeah, and wobbling and scraping and
that's what life is like. There's a constant and it can be very bad dukkha, or it can be quite mild. And what we're always trying to do is to fix dukkha. And Buddhists say that's impossible. You can't fix dukkha. It's always going to be there. And what they call it is the grand resignation. When you stop trying to fix dukkha and you just accept it, and you have all this energy that is completely unleashed, and you don't just sort of stay in bed all day. You have a lot more. You're much more energized, and you're not bothering to fix something that can't be fixed, which is dukkha in Buddhism.
Yeah, I suppose you're not wasting your energy, are you?
No, you're not wasting your energy. But it doesn't mean. But a friend of mine said, you do some marvellous things trying to fix dukkha.
Yeah,
and
it probably quite inspires quite a lot of stuff, doesn't it?
I think Amnesty International was set up.
Basil.
I think Amnesty International was set up by a lawyer reading the newspaper on the London Underground, and you could say he was trying to fix dukkha. In a way, but of course. Of course, I mean it's a very good thing to do, but
the frustration of it being so difficult or impossible, like you say, to completely, So it's always. I mean, I think trauma is not. You couldn't really say it's dukkha. I mean, it might be dukkha. It's very complex, but the Buddhist view of what you just said is that life is always unsatisfactory. That's what they say. And once you can accept that, you get what's called equanimity and a lot more energy. And equanimity is a wonderfully tranquil state because you're not tossed and pushed around and pulled around by things in life so much. Anyway, hang on.
Basil has been very badly behaved today.
Is there food in these bags?
No.
There isn't food in these
bags? There's no food.
Honestly, what's it? I mean, I was telling you, Oliver, about that Basil and I are on bad terms at the moment.
Yes, well, we ought to explain that Jax has been away for a while, and yes. I think Basil got a bit upset. And he's looking at Jax now, saying, this is terrible what you've been doing, and you're not even taking any notice of me now. You're doing this stupid podcast. He said.
He said you left. It was like, it was only 3 days, Basil, and no, he's sulking. But anyway, sorry.
Anyway, like I say, we tend to write these tabloid headlines because we want simple answers, and really, who really is to blame? And it's to do with forgiveness and self-forgiveness, and stop trying to fix dukkha. Life is unsatisfactory, and unfortunately bad things do happen. And it's, if you can accept that, you will avoid toxic emotions and mental states which will do you a lot of harm. And you'll be able to move on, And I think that, the difficult thing is in accepting these things, isn't it? How did you feel after that retreat? Did it help you accept sort of? Yes. Well, for about 2 days, I was getting all these insights, Buddhist insights into the trauma, and a conversation I'd had with someone came into my mind, and there was one word that person said in the conversation that I remembered, that stuck out, which I hadn't noticed before. There was one word that was used that changed the whole situation for me. And it was very simple, and I went back to Vajragupta and I said, look, this sentence had a different word in it than what I'd remembered, and she said that you've turned a corner. She said, and I won't go into what the sentence is, but it's kind of like the thought that went with the emotion changed, which we were doing in episode 2 of the Trauma First Aid Kit, and because the thought changed, the emotion changed, and it was incredibly powerful. And like I say, it was one word that I noticed had changed in a conversation I'd had, and it turned the whole thing around. And the thoughts that go with the emotions are often very simple, and you can just find like one little bit changes, and it makes a huge difference to the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I think for me, like, we've talked about me being an angry person and things, and I think a lot of the time I feel angry because it almost seems to be my default rather than feeling sad.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It's almost like that feels safer or stronger, like a less vulnerable position.
Yeah.
But so I had a friend who died very suddenly from taking drugs, and I felt furious with the drug dealer who supplied him with the drugs. I also realised that I feel very angry with my friend for taking the drugs, and I feel furious with him for being so stupid. But trying to think rationally, my friend would have had his own reasons. He may have just not thought of it as so dangerous, or he had his own background, his own trauma probably. Similarly, the drug dealer would have, maybe he needed money, maybe he had his own issues, his own bad upbringing. But it's...
And why did your friend take the drugs?
Exactly. What was the motivation?
He was having toxic emotions of his own to take the drugs, which were caused by something else.
Exactly. So much as you want to blame people or like feel the anger, it is complex. It is complex, and again, like probably part of the anger is me feeling guilt for not supporting him enough, and so it all gets intertwined, and
and it all goes back to changing your core belief. Like we talked about in the second episode of the trauma first aid kit, and if you can change that thought, and it can take a long time to do it, you need to find it first, and then using the column, there are 3 columns, you find a different thought that's more accurate. It's not positive thinking, it's more accurate, that you believe. Then it can just turn the whole thing, and you'll have a much more much milder experience of the trauma, and then those emotions won't latch onto things in your present life.
Exactly, and affect.
Which is the now. Now. It's not, trauma doesn't just happen and then it goes away in the past. It's happening now all the time because those feelings are latching onto things.
It affects, and I mean, I worked for a while in a school for kids who've been through trauma, and for example, one thing we were told was, although it was very hard, but we were told don't take it personally, because very often, and it's something that I then started realising that I do myself in certain occasions, where you irrationally don't like someone because they're triggering something else, they're reminding you of someone else, or and so that's the thing, is it does when not, when, I mean, obviously these things are so hard to deal with, but it does continue to affect your life in ways that you maybe don't don't expect. And I suppose one thing as well, which I just would want to say, is that, like, for example, I'm able to go, okay, yes, it's, it's not necessarily my friend who died's fault, it's not necessarily, I'm able to think all of these things, but it's not like suddenly like, I'm healed, ping. So it's it takes time, doesn't it? And I think you have to keep trying, maybe. Or
the other thing is, you'll find your emotions change all the time, so it won't just sort of go away and you're stuck with it and you're got a fixed emotional state. It'll still, the guilt or the anger will still come and go, but it'll be around a much less destructive kind of level, so you'll be able to deal with it. You'll be able to deal with the swings, the mild swings, and so it might, instead of being like 95% guilt, shame, it might be 30%, and it might go from, say, 30, like up to 50 some days, or down to 10 other days. And some days you might feel, oh well, it's completely gone, I'm cured, and then you might wake up the next day and it's gone up to 40, but it'll change around a lower value. If you're sorry to bring maths into it, but it does work. Yeah. So you'll find, it will come and go still, and some days you might wake up and think, oh well, it hasn't done anything, but it will have done.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely an important point to make, is that some days some days things are harder, some days so don't feel hopeless if you are starting to feel better and then you go back a little bit.
Yes.
That oscillation is natural. It's not nice, but it's natural, Yeah,
and you might find your mood changes in the day. Like when you wake up in the morning, you might feel lousy about everything that's happened, and then by lunchtime or something, you feel all right. So I find I don't know if it's just me, but I find my moods are worse first thing in the morning, and they gradually get better and better during the day. But everyone has better times of the day when they feel better. Some people, they call it a lark and the owl.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely
so larks feel better in the morning and owls feel better at night.
Yeah.
And so it's another thing to notice how your moods vary during the day, and the other thing I find, my moods is very bad when I'm going home on the bus for some reason. I feel terrible, and as soon as I get there, I feel all right. I don't know why that is, but it's just the way my moods go.
That's interesting, and obviously I do have to say, mention as a woman, that your cycle does really affect things. Yeah. And it's so funny, the number of times I've been I'm in a terrible mood, and I feel depressed, and then my friends are like, have you thought about this? I'm like, oh yeah. So,
and also things like anniversaries of deaths and things like the anniversary of a death to someone close who died traumatically for you, that will make you feel lousy again. But it's only a temporary thing,
Yeah, and actually I will say about that, I'm not a good person for remembering specific dates.
No.
But it's almost like maybe subconsciously I'm aware of it was roughly this time. Maybe I'm not kind of going, it is the whatever of October, or,
Yeah.
But I do find that my mood is lower around about those times.
Yeah.
So don't be surprised if it's not on the exact day. It could be around it. Fun times, but
Yeah. Okay, so that was the third and last part of the trauma first aid kit. We hope you found it useful.
Yeah, and as always, we do kind of encourage people, talk to a professional if you need to. Also, talk to friends, talk to family, talk to your cat. Take care of yourself. But thank you for listening. And Basil apologises heartily for his. He doesn't.
He looks happy now because it's finished.
He's like my work here is done. So, anyway, thank you very much for listening, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.